I'm John Shrek McPhee, the Sheriff of Baghdad. I always say the world is a fucked up place. We're going to talk about just current events and politics and where the world stands. I'm here with a friend of mine, Ken. Ken, tell a little about yourself to everybody. He's already been on. He's a repeat offender, so you kind of already know him,
Ken. Thanks, John. Yeah, repeat offender. I met John a couple of years ago through a class and just became buddies. I'm a executive for a technology company out of the Bay Area, and so and recently relocated out of California, thank God, to Arizona, and love learning and talking about what's going on in the world today. And obviously, there's enough nonsense and crazy shit happening and enough material to talk about and review, especially in the election coming up and, AG Barr in front of the Senate recently and that debacle and lots of good stuff.
Ooh, all right, man. I gotta be honest, the world is such a weird place. It's I can't believe the world is so right now polarized by blue or red, left or right, Democrats or Republicans, you know what I mean? And the people are, and I would also say this is our government, these elections, our officials, it's the biggest reality show on TV. And why I call it a reality show is all these fuckers want their 10 minutes of fame every fucking day, and there's nothing real about reality TV. So, here we are, we're, look, prime example, right? Look, it's Trump against Biden, right? And this is going to be the fucking crux of every conversation, everything that happens until fucking November.
100%.
You know what I mean? It's so fucking polarizing. It drives me crazy. And it's you can't even have, look, I have trained some, how do I say this? I have trained some high-level Democrats to shoot in the past, right? I'll just leave it at that.
Right.
But I would tell you this, in having them on the range, and look, you know me, if you come to the range, I don't care about any of that. We don't even got to talk about that. That's not why we're here, right?
Right.
And in having people like that come to me for shooting training, right? And, generally they're against guns, but some of them realize you got to be able to defend yourself and your family. And having people like that on the range and talking to some of these guys, girls, I'm trying not to give them away. If they have money, they're fiscally conservative, like it or not. No one wants to give the IRS 40% every fucking thing you make.
Right. Well, and I would even argue, John, that it's not even Trump versus Biden in this day and age. It's Trump versus, Biden plus the media, Biden plus social media. And, it's, if you just look at the way in which our society is setting up the left for success and how the coverage happens across the country today, it's, unless you're lockstep with the left, you are pissing in the wind. And it's not only is it bad, but it's scary. I mean, look at how, the social media platforms, let's just talk Facebook really quickly, right? They went through this whole process a couple of years ago around not being moderators of content. And so they were not liable legally for what people put on their platforms because they were strictly an open source media platform to disseminate information that they didn't control. Well, okay, but now they're quote unquote moderators and they're editing what people put out on the market in these open source platforms, but now they're shaping the narrative, right? And they're shaping it heavily in one direction versus the other. And so, when you've got 80% of the media leaning left, and then you layer in social media on top of that is moderating the content, you just can't get good information. And they're skewing the information in a way that makes it totally unfair for both parties. My perspective is I candidly don't give a shit if you're left or right. If we can have dialogue to learn from each other, then I think that's great, and I think we should, right? But you can't do that in this day. It doesn't feel like you can anyway, not in the way that the information gets disseminated.
It's the party line or shut the fuck up, take your beating because you don't agree with the party line.
Right. And if you don't agree, if you're at all conservative on any level, then, all of a sudden you're a racist or you don't have a heart and you don't care about people, right?
Yeah.
And, nothing's further from the truth. If you look at, as an example, look at San Francisco, right? Let's just take one of the heavy left-leaning cities. And you just take it as a litmus test and say, okay, well, how successful have your quote unquote care about the people policies? How does that work for the people? Well, San Francisco has got a massive drug problem, a massive homeless problem. You're stifling business, which creates jobs and gives people the ability to take care of their family. And how does that help support people and be the party of caring versus how people generalize the right side of the spectrum, where they say that the people that are on the conservative end don't care about the people?
Right.
Why can't we disagree respectfully and have good dialogue as opposed to spewing this hateful rhetoric for the other side, right? Which is, for me, one of the most disturbing components of it.
Man, I totally agree. I also seen yesterday, Zillow puts out, Zillow is the real estate guys, right? And they put out a housing report on every city across the country yearly, right? And what you'll see is it's kind of hard to understand, right? Because my wife's a real estate agent, but it's hard to understand. But essentially, an average city, right? A city that like people are moving to will have a deficit of houses by like 10%, meaning there's 10% more people coming here than we have houses, right?
Right.
And like most cities are plus or minus 10%, right? There's a turnover, they're growing, blah, 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 right? Right now in San Francisco, there's a 96% surplus of houses. What does that mean? Like nobody is living there, and the people who are trying to sell their house cannot because there's so many houses on the market because that people have moved. And I'll say this is like, I think people forget this, but the wealthy in this country, if you fuck with them, they have the money to go somewhere else. Right. The middle class in this country, right? It might take them a little bit to save money and maneuver a little bit, but they're not going to fucking stay either. So what are you left with, right? You're left with that shell of a city like fucking Detroit. And what I don't understand is, these, and I'd also say this is, San Francisco's Nancy Pelosi.
100%.
Right? Like, so what I don't understand is people love what she says on the news, you know what I mean? But look at the fucking policies of these cities that have voted for one party for 50 fucking years. And I'm trying not to use the term Democrat, but, Chicago, Detroit, New York have been voting one way. You can't even run in those cities as a Republican. Like you get laughed out. No one would vote for you. So it's always Democrat against Democrat. But the truth is like, I feel like, look at the policies and the effect these policies have. Like I know everyone loved Obama, but Obamacare, no one read it all. No one even knew how it worked. It was like, if you don't agree, you're a fuckhead kind of deal. And the media ran with it too.
Well,
how are we creating policies that no one knows what the fuck is in it?
Totally. And that's what was so funny about the Obamacare stuff, or, let's just call it, you call it Obamacare or Affordable Care Act. Pelosi literally came out and said, we need to pass this, and we won't know what's in it until we pass it. Like, she literally fucking said, we don't know what's in it, so we have to pass it to figure it out. Like,
Right.
hold on. How does this even make sense? And if you
Right.
look to your point around, what the left-leaning cities are doing or left-leaning states are doing, the best indicator of what's going to happen in the future is understanding what's happened historically. And if we
Right.
look at what history has created for us, whether it's, socialism and, components of that, or far left policies, all you've got to do is look at what these systems have created to understand to a high level of accuracy what they're going to do in the future. Let's take a look at California just in general. Now, when Arnold Schwarzenegger, who was the last, Republican, if you want to call him Republican, but he was far more Republican or right than had been in California historically, right? Prior to him, the last one was Reagan. He left California as governor. They were making money. They had cut taxes, and people were happier in that state. Well, ever since him, it's been, heavily left. Now you've got Newsom as governor, and his biggest thing right now is he's going to take California income tax from 13.9%, which is already massive, to 16.9% is what he's proposing. And get this, dude, making it retroactive. So you're now going to pay back taxes on previous years of income tax in California. And if you've left the state of California, he is going to hit you, trying to, in his proposal, with state income tax for California, even though you're no longer a resident there. Because his argument is, well, you made your money in California, so we're going to continue to tax it when you leave for an additional 3 years. Like, huh? So
Yeah.
I'm leaving your state because of the policies and the crazy taxation, and yet you are still going to try to take money from me, when the reality is they can't balance their books because their social programs are spending so much money that the only way they think they can get out of it is to continue to raise taxes. But if it's just like managing your home budget. You can't out-earn bad spending, right?
Right.
You just can't. You're always going to chase your tail. And look at the social policies in the state. Have they worked to date? Being one of the greatest tax states in the union, if they haven't worked to date, then what makes you think they'll work in the future? It's the definition of insanity, right?
Right. Totally agree.
I mean, right now, it's wild. And, the Trump hysteria thing is real, man. I can't tell you, you and I talked offline a little bit, but I've had 2 conversations with people this week that, are near and dear to me. And to hear people fight that, hey, I like Trump's policies, but I don't like the way he speaks, or the fact that he kind of shoots from the hip when he does speak. And so I'm now going to vote for Biden because I think he's safer for the nation. Well, I mean, to me, that doesn't make any sense at all. I mean, if you just look at, how Biden was as VP under Obama, the reality is Trump has done far more for America, for let's call it marginalized or, marginalized people or people of color. Trump has done far more for those people than Obama ever did. And to look at these cities, like let's take Baltimore or St. Louis, where these cities have been in complete disarray ever since, the social unrest stuff kicked off. Is that how we want our country to be run? We want to beat this drum about, COVID-19 and, we've got to be scared to death of it. And yet, we've got to shut churches down and meetings and restaurants and destroy people's livelihood. But it's okay to go meet in groups and protest and to call them, peaceful while having burning buildings in the background and cop cars turned over. Like, hold on, this is anarchy. This isn't this isn't peaceful protesting.
Man, look, I couldn't agree more with you. I also think I think once the lawsuits kind of catch up, right? The Chaz, the 16-year-old kid was murdered. His family's suing the state.
Right.
That family's they're gonna sue the city of Seattle, and they're gonna win.
Yep.
Right? Because the city couldn't provide basic resources for the people. So the mom's gonna win millions of dollars, right? Off of the city. Once these mayors start to get sued and their reelection rates drop through the roof, they'll understand the true meaning of law and order. But until then, right, it's going to be total anarchy. California, I mean, think about this. Okay, so if you own a business, right, there's sales and use tax, there's state tax, so think about this. If you sell stuff on the internet from the state of California, right, I bet you that you end up paying more than that 13% every single day you're in California.
Oh, dude.
Way more.
Way, way, way more. And that doesn't take into account executive taxes that go on top of that. The thing is with those internet companies, and being that I'm in that technology sector, what I can tell you is that just being in San Francisco alone, the taxes that are associated with being in that city tied to your company's global revenue because you're headquartered in San Francisco are astronomical. And it just goes to show you that's why people are leaving, because they're like, hey, look, if I have an HQ in, call it whatever, state X, right? It's going to save me how many millions of dollars? Okay, well, what's the return on investment for being in San Francisco? Well, in this world today, where I use the generic term like the world is flat now, meaning that technology has created this environment where it really doesn't matter where you sit. There's no longer, a need to be in this really high taxed locations because people are online. People are working virtually now. So being in San Francisco or being in Manhattan is far less critical than it had been 10 years ago, even 5 years ago because of the growth in technology. So, and Newsom's resolution to that is, oh shit, people are leaving. We've got to fund these social programs that, really aren't doing anything anymore. But in order to cover our ass, we're going to increase business tax. We're going to increase, executive taxes. We're going to increase income tax, which hits the general public. And we're going to tax our way out of it. Well, no, companies are literally leaving in droves.
Yeah. No, it's the Laffer curve. You know what I'm talking about?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So because people are leaving, right? We need to raise the taxes so everybody who stays gets fucked in the ass even worse.
Dry.
Yeah. Dry. And no eye contact. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it doesn't make any sense. And I'll tell you, I think, looking in from the outside at California's problems, I think they could solve all their problems by having, the mortgage stuff. Someone bought a house at $2 million and they pay tax off of that $2 million from the day they bought it. Like every year my taxes go up.
Right.
It's proportional, right? You did that in California, you wouldn't need any money.
Right. 100%. 100%. It's it's wild, man.
And that goes back to Jerry Brown, by the way.
Exactly, right?
Hey, Jerry Brown the first time.
Round one. Yeah. The other thing that's crazy, if you look at the legislation, so San Francisco just elected a new attorney general about a year ago now, I think. And they've come out and very specifically said that she will not prosecute any nonviolent crime. So think about that. If I have a house in San Francisco and I'm not home, or even I'm home and someone breaks in and steals my stuff, right? But don't commit violence against me, they will not prosecute that crime because it's not violent. Now, how does that not continue to fuel this social unrest and the anarchy? I mean, so it's basically carte blanche to the criminal set to say, hey, look, as long as you don't hurt anybody physically, then I don't care what you do.
Do whatever the fuck you want.
Do whatever the fuck you want. So why would I stay there? Let's just say I make an above average income and I live in the city, and you have to make an above average income to live there because of how expensive it is. And now all of a sudden I have to be afraid for my life. And there's no recourse for me in the event that someone breaks into my house. I literally have to stand by and just let them come into my home and take my shit, which is, then you could get into back to the McCluskeys in St. Louis to say, hey, they protected their home and did so successfully, yet they're at the mercy of the law now because they're filing charges against them, which is what San Francisco would do the same thing. So
think about this. Okay, so that same guy busts in your house, right? And he comes after you and your family, right? And you shoot him.
Yep.
The defense is going to say, well, it's a nonviolent crime, but you committed the violent crime.
Right.
So the only punishable offense here is you shooting that man, committing violence.
Is you defending yourself.
Right.
Right. And I've seen people that have said, hey, look, if this crime had happened to a housewife, then you would be justified, she would be justified, the housewife would be justified in using deadly force as defense. But let's just say you're a vet, right? You're ex-military, or you're just an average schmo, but you do gun training and you shoot and you compete in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Well, the barrier to you being afraid for your life is different because you have a better opportunity to protect yourself without using deadly force than the housewife does. So it can't be someone broke in your house and you're just afraid for your life. It's, well, you've got a higher level training, so you really weren't afraid for your life because you can protect yourself. And it's like, yeah, I can. And the way I'm going to protect myself is by putting a fucking bullet in this asshole that broke into my home, right?
Because I know better.
Or my training.
Yeah, dude, I totally agree, man. At what point does the cycle start to shift away from, the chaosness, right? At what point does the media stop being the problem? At what point, and then look, I think our problem is, I think Trump is a New York City elitist fucking asshole.
Right.
I do, right? I do. Am I going to vote for him again? Yes. You know what I mean?
Right.
But I think our problem is we've created a fucking society of elitists that are just fucking raking in that cash. That AOC chick's already a millionaire, multimillionaire.
Right. And how? Right?
What is how? Yeah.
$120,000 a year. So how all of a sudden within 2 years or 3 years have you put millions of dollars in the bank? Right? It's the same thing when the Clintons left the White House. They were pretty much broke, but within a few years of setting up the Clinton Foundation, they were worth hundreds of millions of dollars, heavily funded by the Saudis and the Russians, right?
Right.
And yet no one's answering that question. Well,
the media is not. Look, I think the media is the problem, right? I kind of been looking at the conservative media that's out there now, and I'm not talking Fox News, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. There's other channels out there that are more conservative these days than Fox News. I find that hard to watch because I think that's too far over the line as well, right? So it's like, there is nothing that is like, there's no media out there, my opinion, that is common sense based and kind of facts for the fucking average guy living in the fucking, living anywhere in the United States.
No.
You know what I mean? And the media is not fair at all. And the reason I say that is, fucking Sleepy Joe on his fucking tirade about, how he solved fucking Israel and UAE's problem and he's been working hard on that. I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about, Joe? You've been home for COVID.
Did he say that? I didn't see that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He said, they asked him about, what do you think about the peace deal between UAE and Israel? He's like, we've been working hard on that. Like, what the fuck are you? Who's we? The royal we? Like all America? Yes. Like, we as in you? Like, fuck no, right? But, so, but what ends up happening is him, Hillary Clinton, these debates, they're not asking fucking hard questions. You know what I mean? You got Hillary Clinton, talking about being a fucking, talking about how Trump's a misogynist, right? But,
right.
But at the same time, it's like, yo, your husband is on Pedophile Island how many fucking times? Not one person ever said, well, you think Trump's a misogynist. What do you think of your own fucking husband who's getting his dick sucked in the Oval Office?
Right.
Like, seriously, you think Bill Clinton is the misogynist? No, he's the grandfather of the fucking Ponzi scheme. You know what I mean? So it's like, I feel like they are not asking the hard questions, right, to anyone in the Democratic Party.
No, 100%. Everything that goes to, to Biden and now Harris is a softball, and it's all there to help them shape their narrative. Journalism shifted, in my opinion, materially in the wake of social media, because every asshole with a keyboard said they were a journalist when they were just spewing, their point of view in lieu of the news, right?
Yeah.
And
yes,
you cannot get, any good information out there at all unless you literally just dive in and look at what is, and literally read the proposals and the policies yourself. Because even, you watch, you talk about Fox News. If you try to watch Fox News, look, Hannity is obviously, his motive is to make Trump look as good as he can make him look. And the same thing with Tucker Carlson. If you go to CNN, you've got Cuomo and, Anderson Cooper. They all have an agenda. Now, it doesn't mean to say that everything they say is a lie. It just means there's an agenda. And so things are going to be skewed one way or the other, right?
Right.
I mean, in California, back to California as an example, and you talk about what's happening in our world today, Prop 209 in California came out in 96, and it was kind of a reshaping of what previously was affirmative action. So what ended up happening is two African American leaders came together. They wrote Prop 209 that literally says you cannot discriminate for any reason tied to race, creed, ethnicity, religious background, anything like that, that everybody should be treated equally, which is essentially what our Constitution says. Well, they are now trying to repeal Prop 209 to say that you have to treat these specific parties differently in order to quote unquote level the playing field. And so this is one of the debates I got into with a buddy of mine the other day, that I grew up with from high school. And I said, hold on, you are upset about what you call systemic racism. And so in your state, you are supporting a proposition that's been in effect for 15 years that clearly states that discriminatory action is illegal and it sets a level playing field. And you are supporting the new proposition that clearly creates discriminatory action. So how does that make any sense? how are we going to trade one, non-racist proposition like 209 with something that clearly creates a racial divide? It's no different than in Harvard a couple of years ago. It came out that Harvard literally had two sets of criteria to get into school. If you were Asian, then there was a much higher barrier to entry to get approval to go to Harvard. If you were anybody else, then you had the lower set of criteria to get into. Well, that is by definition discrimination.
It totally is.
But it's okay to discriminate when it leans one way versus when it leans another way. But if discrimination is bad, which we can all agree that racism, discrimination, all those things are horrible and they should be wiped out completely, which is a whole nother conversation. But if discrimination is bad, period, then you can't say it's bad except for it leaning one direction or the other. It's either bad or it's not bad, right? It's either okay.
No. It's discrimination unless it's white people, and then it's fuck them.
Exactly. I mean, look at this poor kid Cannon, right? That got shot and killed the other day. And no one in the media is covering it because it doesn't fit the narrative, right?
Well, yeah. Well, okay. So let's paint this picture. 5-year-old kid riding his bike in front of his own house was shot by the neighbor, right? A 25-year-old.
Yep, that's what I thought, yep.
On drugs, right?
Yep.
Fucking shoots this kid in front of his own house, in front of fucking the whole neighborhood, in front of the parents, right?
Right.
But think about this. Black man shoots white kid. The comments I seen on the internet, right? Because I knew there'd be shitty comments, is fucking kill all the white kids. Fuck that. Fuck them, right?
Right.
And the truth is like, imagine switching the roles.
Yep.
Right? What if a white man murdered a black 5-year-old riding his bike in front of his house? Where would we be right now? The problem is we've created this, people say racism, reverse racism. No, racism is racism, I think. Right? Uh-huh. No matter what your skin is. And I'll tell you this, being married to an Asian, you haven't seen racism because Asians get discriminated against, in my opinion, a fuck ton more than anyone else.
Totally. 100%. And the reality is, man, the killing of this poor kid Cannon, and it's horrific what happened to him. Yes, he's a white kid and the dude that shot him is a black man. Does that mean that it is automatically a racially driven, situation? Well, not automatically. It doesn't mean that. Maybe he's just a sick motherfucker that was high on drugs and decided it was time to go kill this poor kid. Maybe it meant that he was pissed about the things going on in the world and he decided to do it because the kid was white. Well, you have to figure that out. And the point is, you can't just assume that because a bad actor does something that it's automatically racially driven, right? And that's what's happened in our society when you look at all these things that have gone on in our country to date, where now, if it's an action against a black guy or a black person, then it's automatically considered racially driven. But if it's a bad act against someone let's say that just is white, then it's not automatically racial, right? Right. And that's the double standard that doesn't make any sense. I mean, they just announced today the special investigator that was going in Chicago that was reviewing the Jussie Smollett case. They came out and said that there was significant bias and I want to make sure I quote it properly, but significant bias and significant overreach of prosecutorial discretion as it relates to the Jussie Smollett case, right? But what they haven't said is whether or not that those things are illegal. Well, dude, the guy fabricated this entire story and then set this entire thing up to create a racial narrative. Well, and now we're just going to let him go? look at the ramifications of what that started, right? And how are we not going to say that what he didn't incite violence, didn't create risk for people in that community that are not of color, right?
Yeah.
But no one wants to talk about that because, again, it doesn't fit the narrative. And I think it's horrific. I think that our society today immediately jumps to things are racially driven, as opposed to taking a step back and looking at things pragmatically. And it goes back a long time, but look at how Obama treated any of the shootings that included police officers. The first thing he did was get to the pulpit and jump up and down and say, this is horrific and we need to look at the police force and we need to go after them with every law that we can. Before he even knew what took place. The whole hands up, don't shoot narrative has been completely debunked. Yet you have these clowns running around today still quoting hands up, don't shoot, right?
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
Well, what the fuck? It's been proven to be completely false, and yet we're still gonna quote the narrative. We're still gonna regurgitate that narrative. All that does is fuel the racial divide. It doesn't solve a problem. It doesn't help us get anywhere. And then you start talking about these clowns from what are they? My buddy that has his YouTube video with the gun. Is it the NAFC?
I don't know who you're talking about.
It's that all black community that went out.
Oh yeah, the not fucking around with Grandmaster Jay.
Yeah, Grandmaster Jay. Like he's got his what's he call his AR? He calls it the bullpup, right? And he's on the internet talking about those negligent discharges and how when they fucking shot themselves, right? That it was because he tapped the buttstock on his AR and it released the bolt and that fires around. So it's not really a negligent discharge. It's just handling of the firearm. Like, which is...
oh, sorry. Was I not supposed to bust out hysterical laughter? Sorry, I'm joking.
Yeah, no, dude, it's hilarious. But we've got people actually listening to these people. And like you and I have talked about, I mean, if you really want to know who is driving these different, groups of people, whether it's Antifa or the NFAC or the Black Lives Matter movement, to the point that you and I have talked about, like follow the money. Follow the money to see who's in control. And who's in control are the Democrats, and they're doing it because it fits their narrative, drives their initiative. And it's George Soros who's dumping hundreds of millions of dollars into these things.
Yeah.
And
agree.
And even if you support the Black Lives Matter movement, if I were a supporter of Black Lives Matter, right, and I said, okay, like I support this initiative, and then I found out that all the money coming into it didn't actually even go to this initiative, it actually went to some political group, I would be pissed. I would say, well, hold on. That means that the money that I think is going to support my movement isn't actually going to me. I'm being lied to. And so now I have a problem with that. But no one does that. They just say, okay, well, it is what it is. When the reality... That's
because if you say anything against it, you're a racist.
Right.
It's a catch-22, right?
It is. And it's sad. And this whole white privilege statement around, you've got a leg up in society because, you're white as opposed to someone else. I don't know about you, but man, I got kicked out of my house at 16. I had to make my own way. I joined the military because I was an idiot kid and I needed some direction in life. And I made my own way, man. I worked my ass off. I failed a bunch in life and learned a ton. But you've got to look in the mirror and say, what can control today? What decision can I control? and take out of the hands of anybody else. Because I'm the master of my destiny. If you buy into any other narrative, then all you're doing is perpetuating a victim mentality, right? And
Correct.
And that just means that you're a bitch in my mind. You're just a bitch. If you want to be a victim, then you're your own problem.
Man, I totally agree. The whole white privilege thing, I keep hearing people talk about this, and I'm like, when's my privilege going to kick in? Right? Like, I want some of this privilege shit too. Like, I keep hearing about it, and people keep telling me about it, and I'm in the prime category for it, but I still don't know what this shit looks like. You know what I mean? Like, when do I get my privilege? You know what I mean? And I think what people miss is privilege is privilege. You know what I mean? Like, look at the United States. I mean, if it's so racial, why are there rich black people out there, rich Asians, rich Latinos? If there was systematic racism, there'd be a whole race that had no money whatsoever.
Right.
Somewhere, like, I'm just saying, right? So what I don't understand is, like, this whole privilege thing. Like, when's my privilege kick in? When do I not gotta fucking grind it out every single day of my life? But the problem is, privilege is the political and elite class, and they're pointing the finger somewhere else. So you blame the majority of this country for doing what? Fucking just existing? Like, and that rolls kind of into I'm tired of all these high-level Democrats saying, if you vote for Trump, you're the fucking problem. You're a racist. I'm just a fucking regular guy trying to make his way in the world. And if you were ever in the army, you don't get paid shit. And if you ever retired from the army, your retirement ain't shit. You know what I mean? Which means you got to work until you die, even if you did those things. Like, so how the fuck did I become the problem? I don't get it. I just don't. The whole thing, I don't understand any of it. But I think it's all political wrangling. Everything is political.
Well, it is.
Look, I sent you that article where Trump went to the fucking Davos, the World Summit, and said, we're not going to be run by globalists. Fucking 2 days later, coronavirus pandemic comes out.
Right.
Like, you can't tell me that isn't tied together somehow.
Dude, just look at the evolution, right? And so if we go back to 2016 when Trump was elected, and we look at what the narrative around Trump getting into the office was, right? He was a Russian spy, and he was colluding with the Russians, and he was this and he was that. And all of that is in the process of being totally debunked. And the Obama administration with Comey was a complete, totally illegal misuse of the strongest law enforcement agency in the world, trying to defame Donald Trump. Well, that's been proven to all be false. It's in the process of proving that Biden knew about it. And Obama knew about it. Susan Rice definitely knew about it. And so all these people knew. And then as soon as the impeachment failed, right, then it became other things. Then it became COVID, right? So it's this perpetual, let's find a way to totally derail the Trump presidency. And the fact that people can't, take a step back and look at it pragmatically, even if, someone's going to, accuse me of being this conspiracy theory guy to say, look, it feels like COVID was generated, at least the mass hysteria around it was generated to create problems for Trump. Well, just look at how things have evolved. The Russia hoax never worked. Impeachment failed. So now we're looking for something else in order to derail this. And the craziest thing about all that, and when you look at COVID, was everyone called Trump a racist for calling it the Wuhan virus, which is no different than SARS, and calling SARS what SARS is. So he's a racist for calling it the Wuhan virus, which makes a ton of sense to me because that's where it came from. Then they called him a racist for shutting down travel from Asia and then shutting down travel from Europe. Well, when he did it earlier than anybody said he should, and then he got up for it, Biden came out, called him a racist, same as Pelosi did, and then 2 months later they came back and then ridiculed him for not doing anything sooner. And you're like, dude, the guy can't win, right?
Right.
If he's proactive about it and takes steps early, and I think the steps he took were super pragmatic, and they were even further reaching than what everyone had were openly talking about. And now Biden wants to come out and say, oh, he would have done this differently and Trump should have acted sooner. Well, fucking Biden was saying we never should have shut anything down, when it all was started. And so, it's absolutely asinine. And the scary thing is it's only going to get worse between now and November. And in absence of real debates, in order to see these leaders, go head to head and have these hard conversations in front of the world, the society will rely strictly on the face value of the information they're being provided through Facebook, Instagram, and mainstream media that is 80% left leaning, meaning we're
80%
with nonsense.
80%. I'd say Twitter is 100%, 99%.
Yeah, no, I mean 80% in like the general media, like the news branches, right? MSNBC, CNN, all those groups.
Dude, I'd say they're all, look, 80% would look fair. If you look, I'm serious, man. I know it's funny, right? But 80% would look fair if you've seen it these days.
True.
Right? Look, they're trying to establish this new norm where eventually it's so fucked up, somebody who is a common sense based human being who's just trying to live their life and raise kids and have a good life, right? They're trying to create, and they see these terms all the time, the new norm, right? Well, the new norm is if we make the world look so fucked up, eventually you're going to have to agree with us on something. Even though, before we fuck the world up, you would never agree to that. So they're trying to create this fucked up world to eventually you're going to make concessions just to fucking get along and live. And if you don't, well, you're on the extreme. When really the whole time they were shoving the extreme in your face. And as soon as you accept it, they point the finger back at you and they flip the script, right? So I think 80% being fucking what they do, bullshit. The fucking media is, I would say Fox News is 80% because they try to be fair, but they're still on Trump's side. I would say MSNBC, there's no way. I seen a guy on MSNBC with the muffin haircut, Dorothy Hamill haircut lady, right? And this guy's like, Trump supporters are scared that, in the next few years, the minorities are going to take over. And that's why they're all racist. And it's like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, my own wife's not even white. Like, no one gives a fuck about that, right? But they're trying to make this new norm so extreme, right? So I don't think they're 80% at all. I think they are 99%, right? Fucking left-leaning and giving you the narrative, their narrative. And I also think that narrative is like, who owns the news organizations? And what you'll see is whoever owns these news organizations, right, leads back to fucking George Soros. So George Soros is paying for rioters and to go peaceful protesters to go fuck up property in these cities. And then he is having his news crews fucking film it so he gets ratings also. They're playing all sides, and if you agree with it, right, like it's fucking just crazy to me. But I also think in saying all of this, I also think the middle is somewhere more towards the right than it ever was in the middle, right? And let me explain what I say. How I justify that is, you got the far left, far right, right? You hear about it all the time. Most Americans right? 360 million people. Most Americans, I'd say, let's say 300 million are in the middle. But where is the middle these days? The Democrats, or the left, whatever you want to call them, have gone so far to the left. The middle is probably 75% of the spectrum. They're pushing people away every fucking day, I think, right? And I think most people are just fucking tired of it, ergo making them more towards the right than in the middle. I don't think it's going to work. Like, I think the problem becomes is how much can you fuck up and still be on top of the game? You know what I mean? You there? Hey.
Oh, sorry, I got put on mute. That's 100% my hope, man, is that with everything going on today, is that people look at the craziness happening in society and go, hold on. You know,
right.
The narrative. What's that?
Yeah, like, wait. What just fucking happened this time?
Yeah. And like, do I want this in my town? Do I want this in my city? Like, this is crazy talk. And so if I vote for this side, then we're going to have perpetual problems related to this because these are in locations that have been managed by the left for decades. Or am I going to look at the other part of the countries that have been managed differently from the other side of the spectrum and see that they're predominantly fucking peaceful and operating well, right? Like, that's my hope. And talk about catering, dude, just look at our friend Kamala Harris, right? So when she was elected to the Senate, she was touted as the first female Native American senator, right? And
right, right.
Beautiful, like, progress. Okay, good. I like progress too. Like, I want to see all groups of people be successful. So if that's true, good for her. Well, now she's touted as the first female African American. And you're like, hold on, like Pocahontas, round two? Like, I hate to tell you this, that some people believe gender is fluid, which is ridiculous, but now our ethnicity is fluid? Like, what are you guys talking about? And it just goes to show that they're manipulating the public to fit the narrative that works for today. And
you or me, we have to, stick to the fucking rules and laws and shut the fuck up with every day them motherfuckers, they're shifting the goalpost.
Right. And the craziest thing about Kamala Harris and the left and shifting what's important, right? And shifting, the messaging to fit a narrative. So if you go back and watch the debates, the primary debates for the Democratic Party, dude, Kamala Harris came out and said to Biden on stage in front of the entire country, you've been accused of sexual harassment multiple times, and I believe your accuser, right? She very specifically said that. Okay, well, now you believe this guy is a sexual predator, but now you're on the ticket supporting him to be the president of the country? You're like, hold on. So the party of the left and the party of the all-inclusive and the party of the people, quote unquote, now supports like what people agreed was a sexual predator, and he's now going to be president, and his number one accuser or supporter of the accusations is now supporting him to be president. So how does this make any sense, right? How can you call someone a sexual predator and then join forces with them to lead the country?
It's called money.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, money makes that, hey, you feel that sharp thing? That's pride fucking with you, but there's enough money where you don't feel that sharp thing anymore.
100%, man. Look, I don't agree with a lot of what Trump says just in the way he delivers messaging. I always look at it and go, Jesus, right? Like, I wish you could I wish you could deliver a message a little bit better. But when you read what's going on behind it, I agree with the policies, right?
Right, totally.
And I always say that, when Obama would talk, I would watch him talk in his press conferences, and it's funny because I'd watch him talk and go, man, I agree with what you said. Like, that was great. And then I'd go read the policies and like, wait, this is fucking bullshit. Like, I don't agree with any of that at all, like on any fucking level. And conversely with Trump, I hear some of the things he says and I'm like, that could have come across a lot better. But the reality is he doesn't give a shit what people think. He's not going to polish a message to make it super appealing to people because that's not his background. He's, like you said, he's this, mogul from New York that doesn't care what people think. And he's just going to tell you what he thinks. Whereas Obama and the left, who were like these manicured and manufactured message deliverers, are going to polish this turd in order to get people to agree with them. And people today generally, I think, aren't diving into the details to actually read what the policies are and what those decisions actually mean once they're made. And that's
completely agree. Yeah, they don't care what the policy is. Are you kidding me? Don't let the facts get in the way of a good story ever. Come on, everyone knows that, But I also think like they want to be lied to. They want to be told everything's fucking roses.
Right.
Like wake up, you know what I mean? Like, now, I do feel like there's a ton of Americans out there that are just tired of the fucking bullshit. And look, you want to change this bullshit? Get rid of the fucking Congress, right? Get rid of, look, Joe Biden's been in fucking DC for 47 fucking years. What the fuck have you done? These last 8 are going to be amazing, right? Like,
right.
Shut the fuck up, dude. The Congress, the Senate needs to be fucking TDY jobs. You're a senator, you go TDY, you vote this last 2 fucking years, 4 years, whatever, and you're out. And when you get paid, it's just fucking per diem. You get $100 a day for food, you get $100 a day for your hotel, right? It's fucking temporary. Everything is fucking temporary. It is no fucking permanent. Because the problem is when this country was founded, these guys weren't looking to be government officials to get fucking rich. Because the country back then didn't have that kind of money.
Right.
After World War II, when the country started income tax and actually fucking, there was a time where if you were in Congress and the Senate, you stayed in one fucking building and everyone stayed in a big fucking dormitory. Like, Of course they all gotta get along because they ate in the same fucking chow hall. It was kind of like army duty. You live in the barracks, you eat in the chow hall, right? Like, think about how shit got fucking done because they had to all live together. Now, you ain't got to see another one of those motherfuckers. So the government should be temporary. If the government was temporary, most people call this term limits, right? We would have less problems. You come in and you vote on the best shit and you fucking leave. And we don't have real politicians.
Now it's a career field.
Now it's a career field. And you got guys like Joe Biden, 47 years. This is what I don't understand. These guys are like, this guy, I've been in DC for this long. This guy, has no experience. It's like, do you need experience to get elected? No. Right. Look at AOC. Obviously, you could be a fucking 29-year-old bartender, play the part by people who casted you for this part in your area.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, so don't tell me this experience and don't tell me you know so much more about fucking, it's like, it drives me crazy. This is a personal pet peeve. It's like a guy goes to special forces, right? Okay, he had so many years in the army. He went to the selection process. He passed. He goes to the Q course. He passed, right? He does a few years in a special forces group, which is one part of the world. And then you see this motherfucker on the news as some world strategist. Yo, I didn't get the world strategy fucking class. You know what I mean? So, but having, look, yeah, it's true, right? No, and totally. It's the worst with, it's the worst with Navy SEALs. You know what I mean? You swim in a pool and all of a sudden you're a world fucking strategist, right?
Right.
You have no fucking experience in world strategy. But these politicians like Joe Biden are like, this guy, he doesn't know shit. It's like, I don't have to know shit, motherfucker. I just got to go get experts to fucking make sure this happens. And there's a certain amount of common sense in that fucking seems to be lacking these days. So I think, all of it needs to be temporary. Now, having said that, if Joe Biden wins, he ain't affecting my life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm going to pay more fucking tax, of course. You know what I mean? But like, no president, seriously, and this is what I don't understand about the hate for Trump. No president has enough fucking power to change your real day-to-day life.
Mm-hmm. You
can loot, you can burn down businesses, you can fuck over small businesses all you want, which is me.
Exactly.
You're not really changing my life.
Right. Well, and the challenge is the good thing about the way that our government is set up is all of the checks and balances, right?
Mm-hmm.
And limiting, the presidential power, which is right. The way that the forefathers shaped this thing was to keep the president's power pretty limited, right? I mean, they're a mouthpiece, but with Congress controlling the budget, the challenge is, if you've got a left-leaning Congress and then you have a Republican president that gets elected, well, the people then have said that over the entire country, they are looking for a more Republican style of leadership. Well, then the Congress, and this is what is bad about it, or what the challenges it creates, is if Congress is more left or Democrat, then they're not going to let the president do the things that he was elected to do as it relates to policy. Because you and I both know that everything starts and stops at the mighty dollar, right?
100%.
And that's the challenge that this is creating in our system. And with lifelong politicians like Biden or Pelosi or, anybody, right, that's been there for, half a century, they'll control the dollars, which means they'll control what actually happens in the world. And that's a sad and scary thing. And so I think people are so focused on the national election because it's everywhere, where if you really want to affect change, focus on your local government, right? Which is your senator, your congressman or woman, your mayor, right? Your sheriff. That's where you're really going to affect change, because those are the people, especially at Congress, that are going to manage the money to ensure that what you want to have happen can actually happen.
Right.
But people want to focus on the president because it's the top dog, right? Where his powers or her powers are very limited.
Well, look, COVID's a prime example of how limited a president is, right? He's like, hey, go back to normal, open the economy. When you got all these governors like, no, we're going to shut down, no school, no nothing. Like, you're going to just shut down indefinitely, right? How long you think you're going to be raking in them tax dollars, motherfucker?
Right. One of the things that I thought was great that Trump did was the executive order on the relief stuff for COVID, where literally the Democrats wouldn't come to the table to negotiate. So he finally just said, fuck it, and then signed the executive order to do what he thought was right. And then all of a sudden the Democrats started jumping up and down saying, oh, well, he wouldn't listen to us, and, this is just an overreach of power. And it's like, oh, well, now you're only pissed because he decided to take you out of the equation and through an executive power, when now you've lost all ability to negotiate things that you wanted to include in the relief. Well, okay, so you're just pissed about it. That's just it.
Right. Yeah. No. Yeah. He took away, well, it's always about money. When he did that executive order, it took away their ability to negotiate the pork fucking spending, the bullshit that they want money for. Right. And that's where they were mad. Which leads me to the fucking post office debacle. Have you been following this?
Oh my God, dude. Yeah.
The mail-in vote, right? Trump gave a speech yesterday. Did you see this speech? Did you watch it? I think I sent you the link.
I did see it, yeah.
He said the Democrats want $3 billion given to the post office, right, for the mail-in ballot. Like, fucking seriously, how many people vote in any one election cycle? I'd say it's about 120 million. I'd say it's just over a third of this country actually vote. 2/3 don't give a fuck. Bizarre to me, whatever.
Right.
So they couldn't handle 120 million postcards.
Right.
Over a 2-month period. Fucking, right. And they need $3 billion more to do that.
Right.
Fucking bizarre to me, right? So, but when you look in that $3 billion, there's a lot of fucking pork in there that goes back to Democrat programs that they're hiding underneath the premise of this, right? So the premise is Trump hates the fucking post office. The truth is Trump's like, hey, we'll give the post office money, but it ain't going to be $3 billion. And then he said, as for the mail-in ballots and the voter fraud, everyone, if you watch the media, you'll see that there's never been voter fraud in the history of this United States. But Trump goes down and says, hey, 500,000 fraudulent mail-in ballots for this Democratic candidate in this state. And he goes down all those fucking examples. Right? It's like, why? Look, in Mexico, you got to have a fingerprint, a facial ID to fucking vote in Mexico. But here in the United States, it only hurts the minorities. But if you're a minority, right, and or you're anyone and you go to buy booze, you're showing an ID. Even if you fucking got a white beard down to your nipples like me, I still got to show an ID. And then I got to match it to my fucking credit card, right? But even here in the States.
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
It's even further to that point. So if you followed what the Democrats want to do from the election cycle, right? Like, one, look at the history of mail-in ballots. And to be clear, mail-in ballots are very different than absentee ballots, right? So mail-in ballots, look at New York right now. The Democrats want to say that there's never been an issue with mail-in ballots and fraud, which is idiotic, number one. Number two, if you look at the delay of what's going on in New York with the mail-in ballots, they've been stalled for months on an election. And so the left is just, they're talking out of both sides of their mouth, which is, we need to have mail-in ballots in order to give everybody the opportunity to vote, which is, and this is their narrative, to give everybody the opportunity to vote and stay safe. Well, and then they're also saying Trump is trying to rig the election and take, people's ability to vote away from them so he can rig it in his way. And they're saying that if Trump doesn't allow it, he's delaying the election, and so that he can stay in power indefinitely. Well, can you imagine a world, let's just take the example of New York. Could you imagine a world where the election count, the ballot counts are delayed 3 or 4 months? And so literally we vote in November, and it takes us until February or March to actually know what the results are? Like, that is a really scary place to be, because the whole world, and as far as the United States is concerned, is going to erupt, and they're going to blame, the left is going to blame Trump and say that he created, all of these unknowns and created, disarray in the election. And the right is going to say, hey, we told you guys all along that mail-in ballots were problematic. And even further, Kamala Harris has very specifically said that she thinks illegal aliens should be able to vote, felons should be able to vote.
Right.
All these different things. You're like, so now you literally want to let people that are literally not part of our country, not citizens of our country, you want to let them steer the outcome and the leadership of our nation. Like, if we're going to do that, why wouldn't we let fucking Sweden vote for our president? Or the UK? Or Saudi Arabia? Or China? I mean, by definition, if non-citizens can vote, then
Yeah.
Where would we stop?
Hey, let's get some of them Ukraine motherfuckers in here to vote for us, huh? Why not? Fuck it.
Everybody, right? We'll end up being the UN. It's fine. We'll just, the whole world will manage our country because that's worked out so well, right?
Well, yeah, but that's what the globalists want. The globalists want to control the planet, right? They want us lockstep with everybody.
Right. It's, that initiative alone out of Kamala Harris, is really scary to me that we have people fighting for the most powerful, job in our country and arguably the world, that they are saying that people that are not citizens of our country should be able to shape how we manage our country is a really, really scary proposition and is so far out of bounds that I think it's just scary, man. It's really scary. And that alone to me is it's a reason alone to not elect the Biden-Harris ticket. That alone is enough reason to not elect them. Because
what I don't understand about the Biden-Harris thing is there's people, I've heard several people say this, you've heard it too. No matter what, we're voting for Biden.
Yeah.
Like how the fuck do you come to that decision? You know, I didn't vote for Obama because I didn't believe in Obama.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I voted for Trump because I believed in Trump, and I definitely didn't believe in fucking Hillary Clinton was on the up and up.
Right.
So, okay. So Joe Biden's on the up and up enough to vote for? And I don't understand how you hate Trump so much that Biden is the better decision.
Right.
What the fuck is going on? Well, look, it's the power of the media. The media can make anyone fucking popular.
Right. 100%. And, it's scary time, dude. It's,
I'm telling you right now, I'm going on the record. You've heard me say this before. I'm going to keep fucking saying this. There is going to be a bombshell come out. I don't know if it's fucking aliens. I don't know if it's fucking Jeffrey Epstein. I don't know if all the Democrats are going down for fucking drinking fucking kids' blood or whatever the fuck weird shit they do. We're going to see a bombshell before the election that is going to shake the foundations, and you're going to be like, well, what? That just happened?
And you know what, dude? I don't disagree. I mean, if an alien fucking ship landed in Bozeman, Montana or some, LA or whatever, in 2020, I'd be like, yeah, well, welcome to 2020, dude. Like, welcome the aliens. They're here now.
Hey, alien ship landed. And they'd be like, yo, did someone protest that shit? Was a fucking Black Lives Matter out there fucking the aliens up as they stepped off the ship? Yeah. No? Well, it's hard to believe.
Exactly, right? Exactly. Well, my hope is that the bombshell is that, A.G. Barr comes out with just these earth-shattering findings from the investigations around Strzok and Comey and Biden and Obama and Susan Rice, that whole collective, even Attorney General Holder, it all comes out that, look, we've got so much evidence against these guys that here you go, general public. Here is undisputed proof that they did so much illegal shit in investigating Trump and the Russian collusion hoax that people are like, what in the fuck?
Yeah, it wouldn't matter because it wouldn't make the fucking news.
Well, that's true, man.
It wouldn't fucking matter because it won't make the fucking news no matter what.
Yeah. Did you and I talked about it, you see Barr in front of the Senate Judicial Committee hearing?
Yeah. I only watch clips. Like you said, you watch the whole thing, but I only watch clips. That guy's a fucking genius, by the way. Putting up with that shit, like, fuck, dude. I'd have just came out with it. I'd have been like, hey, check this out. You guys brought me here to ask me fucking questions. Why don't you ask the question, then shut the fuck up so I can answer instead of trying to soundbite me.
Right. He is epic, man. I love that guy. And the funniest one was when he started laughing, and I forget the senator's name, but it was a lady that was asking him questions, and he answered her in the negative and said, "No, that's not what happened. This is what happened," and he thoughtfully answered the question.
This concludes part 1 of this SOB podcast. Stand by for part 2 of the SOB podcast, Politics.